Thank you all for joining us tonight for our monthly town hall. I'm really excited to see you all and Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. It's an honor to represent you all in Congress. Especially thankful to my colleagues in local and regional government who are here with us. You will hear from some of them soon. We believe in co-governance, and I look forward to their partnership in this term and in future terms. So we will get some remarks from our mayor of welcome and updates. We will hear from Hennepin County Commissioner Jeff Lundy. We will also hear from former City Council member and Met Council member now, Robert Lilligren. And we will also hear from one of your state representatives, Representative Mike Freiberg. I also want to give a shout out to City Council member Sheila Webb, who is also joining us. And we have a bonus presentation from Amanda Barbosa, who is the spouse of one of the veterans that's been fighting for the PACT that we were just successfully able to pass to help veterans access health care. Mayor Bill Blonigan, I will give you the floor.
Thank you, Congresswoman Omar. People around the world, they all try to find connections, and especially politicians. We all try to do that. My son went to school here at Lakeview Elementary. My 3 other children went to the language immersion program here in Robbinsdale. My wife taught in public schools for 40 years. August 8th, we'll be married for 47 years. So it's more of an accomplishment for her than it is for me. But anyway, we're just like Ilhan Omar. She's a great representative. Bernie Sanders wrote or said that Ilhan Omar has had more life experiences than us, and on her website it says she is one of the most extraordinary people in American politics, and she really is. I have been on the Robbinsdale City Council. I served 40 years as a council member, and then I served now the last 2 since Joseph Biden was elected as mayor. But my experiences really don't rival Representative Omar's. She was born in Somalia in 1982, 1991. She goes to a refugee camp for 4 years. How can that lead to being a congresswoman? She is the first Somali American to be elected to the United States Congress, the first naturalized citizen from Africa. She is the first non-white woman to be representing Congress here in Minnesota, and she tied for first as the first Muslim woman to serve in Congress. Now, she is accessible. She's a generation different from me. Our oldest daughter is just a couple months older than you. She's the Maria Cisneros, the city attorney for Golden Valley, and so I feel this connection. We have gone as a city, another council member, Selman, and I, we went in March to see her in Washington, D.C. She was available. She came to visit us last month, the city manager, Tim Sandvik, and I, in Robbinsdale, and she addressed our concerns. We cannot get the BNSF Railroad to do what we want them to do, but it's not for a lack of concern by Representative Omar and her staff. So probably tomorrow, but certainly by August 9th, I will be casting my vote for Representative Omar in the primary, and I really encourage you to, and I know that whatever you want to address, it'll be addressed by she and her staff, and we're lucky to have them representing us. So thank you very much.
official town hall, and so we should not be making any campaign announcements, please. We really do appreciate your support, Mayor. And now we will hear from Commissioner Lundy and look forward to hearing some of the updates of some of the things that we've been working on together.
I just want to thank everyone as well. It's a warm day, but it's a beautiful time to be inside. Thank God for air conditioning. I want to thank Congressman Omar for inviting me, allowing me to take part in this. I do want to say that, as Mayor Blonigan talked about, whenever we call Congressman Omar or her staff, they answer. Whenever we need something, they deliver. And so I appreciate that, because I often think that what we are elected to do is to deliver back to the people that elected us. And so I want to thank you for that. And everything that, Robbinsdale and Crystal said, go back to Burlington, really push harder. We took those from the county, we took that to the Congresswoman, and she pushed. And so sometimes pushing is against a wall, and so we met that wall, but we're not done. So just to give you a couple updates on Blue Line, only the government came up with a multi-year stage on how do we do things. And recently we just passed the stage of picking a route. And the question on a route is not whether you love it, hate it, whether you think it has everything you want, or whether you need more stuff. Is it a viable route? And we did pass that as a viable route. Now the next stage, which starts now, is how does it get built? What are things that people want? What do people don't want? How can we make it so that people express their desire to say, yes, we want it, and make sure that design reflects all of those needs. And that's what's going to happen over the next 18 to 24 months. There will be a moment in time where every institution will give their consent. But until then, we'll be working with people to make sure that we collect as much information. I was Mayor of Brooklyn Park before. We had, our routes changed only a little, but getting that through really needs people to voice their opinions. Because if there's something that you have that's the world's greatest idea, and you don't tell us, it will not be in the project. And so, please bring that forward to us. And the last thing I want to say this last minute is, I think we've spent so much time talking about all the things, the challenges of transit, we forgot to talk about why transit. Transit is important. 20% of the people in my district, which is the Brooklands, Osceola, Crystal, and Oakland, Rossdale, depend on transit. They do not have a way to get to work without transit. For them, transit can mean a 90-minute bus ride to do what may take us 20 minutes in a car. That is not fair, and I think that we can start to do those things that transit system can deliver. Will it bring investment? Yes, it will. When you have a stop within a quarter mile of a stop, property values go 15 to 20%. We all feel inflation right now. The idea that we can deliver value, spread out the tax burden for all the services that we want to need, that we can spread that out among many other people, that is a way to lower the cost of government on retired people, on people who have fixed incomes, or people that simply are just working to get by. And so we know that transit can help us deliver that. And the last thing I'll just mention is that if you care about the climate, we have to address the fact that cars cause the majority of the pollution that we are dealing with for climate change. And that we need to provide an option. Not force people to get out of the cars, but if they have no other way to get to work, they drive a car, guess what? They're driving a car. And so we need to provide those options. There's, Hennepin County is going to grow by 250,000 in the next 20 years. How many cars is that? It is unsustainable to think that we're going to lower our way out of this. And so we do need that. It is one of our goals as a county to meet the climate change goals as given to us by the state. And addressing transit is one of those things. So there's a journey ahead of us. We are going to work with all the residents, with many partners, and I most appreciate the partner that has brought us here today, Congressman Omar. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And now we will hear from Representative Mike Freitberg, who I also had the honor of serving with in the Minnesota House.
It's great to be here. So I'll keep this short. So I know the purpose of this is to hear from all of you as well. So I want to make plenty of time for that. So I'm State Representative Mike Freiberg. I represent all our parts of Crystal, Golden Valley, New Hope, and Robbinsdale currently in the House. And it's currently District 45B. I served with Congresswoman Omar for a couple of years in the Minnesota House. She's always done a great job of bringing people together. It's great to see turnout from the city level, the county level, the regional level, the state level, and the federal level. So I think we all work together really well on your behalf, and it's an honor to be here. So, I echo what Commissioner Lundy said about the importance of transit. I've been a strong supporter of the Blue Line. I think, it's currently going through a process, and we'll, address some of the concerns that have been raised, but I'm hopeful that we can get it done with state support, with federal support, with county support, and Met Council support. At the state level, we're working on funding education. We need to make sure that our public schools are fully funded. I was glad to hear Mayor Blonigan mention RSI, the Spanish immersion program. My kids are at the same school that his kids went to, and we do all have these fun connections too. My son is the same age as Congresswoman Omar's daughter Ilhan. They used to hang out together at the Minnesota House Chamber, so I kind of miss those days sometimes when they were a little bit littler. But we need to make sure that all the schools have the resources they need. It's great to be here at Lakeview. The Robbinsdale School District's done a great job educating the future, and at the state level, I'm hopeful that we can deliver the resources the school district needs to continue to do a great job. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Congresswoman Omar, for putting this on, and look forward to hearing from everyone in the audience.
Before Minnesota was dealing with COVID, we had an outbreak of measles in 2017, and with the help of Mike Freiberg, we were able to get $5 million to try to help stop that. And so as a freshman, I was learning the amendment process, and it was with the guidance of Mike that I was able to successfully pull that off. So forever grateful. And now we will hear from Amanda. Are you here?
Yes.
Okay. Amanda, as I said earlier, is the spouse of one of our veterans who is dealing with the repercussions of the toxins that go into your system when you're exposed to burn pits. And we were just together on Monday at Monday at Capitol Hill. And luckily, with their advocacy and tenacity, they were able to push the Senate to do the right thing and pass this legislation. And I hear you're going back this weekend for the signing ceremony, so that's really exciting. With that, help me welcome Amanda.
Served 5 deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan throughout the Middle East. He was exposed to burn pits on all of his deployments, and on October 14th, this past October, he was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer as a result of the burn pit exposures. So since that time, I've been working as hard as I can to help him and other veterans get the VA benefits that they need and the care that they need. Prior to the passage of the PACT Act, over 70% of the VA benefits for burn pits were denied. So the passage of the PACT Act is going to be a huge win for veterans. It's one of the most comprehensive and largest veteran care bills in 30 years. So I just wanted to share that. Representative Omar was supportive of the bill through the House, and because of the trickiness of how the Congress works, it went through the House multiple times, and we finally got it done on Tuesday after we did a fire watch and literally slept out on the steps of the Capitol for 5 days to make sure that we get this done. So as a Minnesotan, I'm proud of the movement that we were able to generate. Just one person, I was sitting with my friend after a press conference on Thursday, and he said, you know what, we're just not going to leave. We're just going to stay here on the steps, and we'll call the fire watch, and we'll see if we can get them to do the right thing. So it grew into hopefully a movement that you've heard about or saw, and we were ultimately able to get it done. So it's for all the veterans, and I just want to bring everyone have any toxic exposure, or you know of anybody, not just from the global war on terror, but all the way back to Vietnam, and has additional presumptions for that. And the Cambodian drinking water is included in there as well. So it's very comprehensive, and it's a great accomplishment. Thank you.
No, it is great to be reunited with Amanda on a positive note. Camp Lejeune is actually a really interesting one. My father-in-law is a Vietnam veteran and spent some time in Camp Lejeune. For him, it was really important for me to advocate because he knew a lot of people who would benefit from that being included. I want to associate myself with the comments that a lot of my colleagues and local leaders have made in regards to the Blue Line extension, but I look forward to seeing Robert Lilligren address us as they are an integral part of that work.
Representative Omar, thanks for including me in this town hall. Thanks for holding this town hall. I got to say, our paths have been crossing kind of regularly lately, and I just always appreciate the advocacy in all parts of your district for all the different communities. So thank you. Thank you all for being here, for taking time out of your evenings to participate in this town hall. It's important. And on this project, the Blue Line extension, I know that there has been a new route extended or selected. I represent the parts of the route that changed the most radically, through Robbinsdale, through North Minneapolis. And I really commend communities for stepping up, for participating in this process. This isn't really where folks wanted to be at this point, and I really feel Robbinsdale's sort of pain. You had such an elegant solution on the railroad right away, and that changed. And so now we're having a different discussion. It's a different kind of dynamic. I really commend Mayor Blonigan and the elected leaders for representing their communities well in this sometimes very difficult conversation. We have a moment here going through design where we can address things like safety, especially, and this project staff here and council staff here, I commend you all for the work that you're doing, engaging communities, but especially on that safety issue, we really hear you, and there's opportunity here. And as we go through this, we're figuring out how this project can best serve Robbinsdale, best serve this community. You have leverage in this conversation, and these are conversations I've been part of in my elected life, in community advocacy life, and I'm really looking forward to being your partner, and I hope you're considering your partner on that council to make sure that this community is not just not damaged by this project, but that's well served, and that it really is a springboard for growth and development that you want to see as a community here in Robbinsdale. So thank you for being here, thanks for listening, and Representative Omar, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Robert. My experience as an elected here has been when the Met Council is working properly, they can be great partners for all of us in housing and transportation, and there are certainly leaders on that board that make that possible. Now I want to give you all some quick updates of some of the things that we've been up to in Washington since our last town hall. As many of you know, last week was a hectic sort of rush to try to get a lot of things done. A couple of weeks ago, we were able to pass the assault weapons ban along with the bipartisan gun violence prevention bill that we passed. There has been an announcement on a budget reconciliation addressing climate, taxes, and health, which hopefully will be voted on Saturday, and when we go back on Wednesday, the House reconvenes on Wednesday, hopefully we'll take that up. Many of you know that I sit on the Education and Labor Committee, and in that I prioritize getting funding for our public schools, making sure labor standards are met, and our union siblings are protected. But I also work a lot on child nutrition programs. I passed the Meals Act when COVID hit to help feed nearly 30 million children across the country. And now we have started the process of reauthorizing the Child Nutrition Act. I introduced 2 pieces of legislation, and in the hearing on last week, committee passed 2 of the pieces of legislation that I introduced that will be incorporated in the reauthorization. One of them is the No Shame at Schools Act, which is a bill that I co-lead with our Senator Tina Smith. This is a bill that prohibits schools from bullying students who are unable to pay for school meals. It also stops schools from using school resources to hire debt collectors, which is really an insane practice that some of our schools are carrying on. And then the other bill is to create a National Advisory Council to help advise schools how to best navigate the school meal crisis and shortages that they might be dealing with. Many of you know that we passed legislation to codify marriage, the same-sex marriage into law, because many of us are afraid of what happens if the Supreme Court decides to go after that. I think we are close to passing that in the Senate as well. We need 5 Republicans, and it looks like we're getting a signal that they might be interested in helping us pass that. We also passed the Right to Contraception Act, which I didn't think it would be legislation that we would ever need. And it's a great way for us to be proactive in case the Supreme Court takes action in that. The House passed a large funding bill to address transportation, housing, and urban development. We were able to successfully pass 9 amendments into that. One is to assess the long-term economic outcomes of the low-income housing tax credit. One was to ban desegregation, again, of children who are unable to pay for school meals. And the other significant one was to protect the Department of Energy's loan program so that we are funding only clear energy projects. I want to talk a little bit about some of the work that we do in regards to casework, because the majority of the work that the district office here in Minnesota does on behalf of our constituents is to try to provide a way to liaison with federal agencies. Our staff has an hour-long presentation on civics, which is discussing how different levels of government work, how government functions, and how we are able to connect with our constituents in the work our office does on their behalf. So if you have a business, if you have a community group, or any other way that you are gathering and you would like us to come out and make that presentation so that people know what they can access from our office, we would love to be able to do that. We are currently seeing some issues that are being impacted by extensive backlogs. One of them is the IRS. There are 21 million unprocessed tax returns still waiting. Congress is still struggling to fully fund the IRS. The IRS needs to update their ancient computer systems, increase enforcement, and make sure that people are paying their taxes, and we're continuing to work with them in being able to do that. Another important thing that our office works on is making sure people have their passports. Last couple of months, we've been able to help process dozens and dozens of passports for people who are traveling internationally, and helping them reconnect with their families or be able to go on that vacation that they've been saving for. And Natasha, I don't know where she is here in the room, from our office, works on that, and you can connect with her. Lastly, as many recently helped process immigration applications for, and we just want to welcome their families to Minnesota. They arrived a week ago, and it is one of our constituents, this Falama, who was able to petition for his 3 daughters, and his 3 daughters arrived in Minnesota last week. He lived in the Quebec. We also have a mayor who we helped with recently processed an immigration, a work visa application for that he's been waiting for, and he was waiting to buy a house, and because of the work that we've been able to do with him, he's now purchased a home. Unfortunately, he's not going to be in the fifth, but nonetheless, we are happy for him. So congratulations. Immigration work is one of the most painful work our office does, but it's also the most exciting work when we're able to help people keep their jobs and stay in this country, or when we're able to reunite families. And so with that, I will take some of your questions for the duration of there is a mic. There's a question.
And I'll hold on.
And if my staff is here, if there's some water, somebody can grab me.
Hello, good afternoon. I've been a good supporter of yours, but one of the criticisms of you has been, I think, the phrase defund the police. I think that's really harmed the Democrats across the country. Do you have new phraseology and a way to describe your position that's more helpful than that?
Yeah, I mean, it was always really, that's a good question. It was always really about trying to make sure how do we provide the adequate resources to have holistic way to address community safety. And I think outside of the phrasing, my work in itself has been about that, right? Where I fought to make sure that we have accountability by introducing the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, or trying to limit the amount of people that are harmed or killed by no-knock warrants, by introducing the Amir Locke legislation that we did, or the legislation that I introduced to create a national board to look at police misconduct, so that, you know, when we have bad people, that they don't stay and then harm that department and its credibility. But I've also helped usher resources to try to make sure our community has what it needs to do crime prevention. I helped work with the city of Minneapolis to fund a program that addresses trauma and interrupts violence. That is a partnership with North Memorial to make sure that gun violence victims and their families are getting the support they need, because we know that most people who are victims end up victimizing. And so there's a lot of work that I've done to try to make sure that what I was calling for is understood. And it's unfortunate because sound bites show up a lot more than the actual work that you're doing.
Do you have a new one?
Maybe we can work together.
It's oddly important.
It wasn't mine, and I don't think I ever used the word in itself, myself.
It's very important.
Yes. All right, as we wait for the next question, I just want to give a shout out to Robbinsdale School Board Chair, Helen Bassett, who's here. Vice Chair Sam Sands. We also have the excellent Superintendent David Aaron Shuram. My apologies for any mispronunciation.
my name is Carrie, and you are just beautiful. I am so glad I am here. It took an act of God to get me here. But I'm trying not to cry because I'm kind of overwhelmed. Mine's a housing issue. I lived in a agoraphobic woman, and I've lived there for 7.5 years. Her home has been closed, forfeit. I'm going through a lot of stuff with the county. And I don't know what to do about this. The woman that's been working with the lady that owns the house or owned the house, she has a hard time dealing with this, and she's under a lot of, she has a lot of anxiety, and I'm finding myself isolating because of the housing, and we can't find anything to move to. So I'm feeling really helpless, and I don't know what else to do. I just needed to state that.
So we have Natasha who does housing. We'll connect you. She's here. Actually, she will come and help process your case. And again, for those of you who have any housing issues, our office can liaison with agencies to try to make sure that you are housed. It's a priority of ours. I'm sorry for everything that you're going through. And thank you for being here.
My issue's on the crime. My name is Mulder Blue, writing for governor, hopefully. And the thing is, I feel that the public officials aren't doing their job when it comes to like the swinging doors and stuff like that, because I know they could set up a system to where you can make an 8-month sentence to do a license. Because them just getting in, getting out, and then recommitting. Let them commit the crimes in prison. Let them charge them on the street, but I know why they probably don't do it. Because of some of the laws that they have here in Minnesota that I can't get anybody, public officials, to listen to what I got, because I want to put both sides together and hear me out. Some Democrats, some Republicans. Because I'm the independent libertarian. I didn't vote for Biden. I didn't vote for Trump. I voted for Joe Jorgensen here in 2020.
Criminal justice reform is needed, and so you and I can have a conversation.
Yeah, but I want Republicans and Democrats together to do
Yes.
it. That way they can't sit there and say, that just.
Yeah, and I mean, interestingly, right?
I can't get the state public officials together.
The legislation that we passed to deal with gun violence. It's the first piece of legislation that we passed to deal with that in a bipartisan way in 30 years. And so there is a path. I can see it.
Yeah, I got a system where I think to where gang members, like in prison, wouldn't be able to recruit other gang members because they're not going to want to sit there and do all that time because they usually you're a prospect or something like that. I've been in the system for over 24 years for a crime I didn't commit. And something's got to change, and I got it.
I don't think the data supports that, but we can talk further.
Hi, Congresswoman Omar. It's so nice to meet you. I'm Sean Hansen. I'm here with my daughter, Maya. We admittedly live in the city of Minneapolis, but we wanted to come see you. I think that really we can't overstate the fact that the moment of what we're seeing going on in Minneapolis is very tragic. As far as like how much gun violence has been going up, I think that in downtown Minneapolis, I was reading that it's up 40%. Earlier today, I read that there was gun violence at the Mall of America. Also, a 15-year-old was shot and killed standing on the light rail platform downtown in Nicollet Mall on Tuesday at 5:30 in the evening. Like I said, I really appreciate the work that you've been doing as a gun sense advocate. What can we be doing now to really help protect our communities?
I mean, obviously, there's a lot of work that I believe the city of Minneapolis, the mayor, and the city council can do. They just have to dig deep. I think that there is a a tolerance for inaction that is really damaging all of us. There's a lot of passing the buck. There's a lot of finger pointing. The reality is the safety of Minneapolis. I'm a resident of Minneapolis. I don't live that far from downtown. I live in Lorraine Park. My son, who's 16, recently saw somebody get shot. And so there is work that is necessary that our mayor and our city council members have to do. There is nothing that county can do, there's nothing the governor can do, and there's nothing that members of Congress can do. In municipal issues, when you are the boss of the police department, when you have the power of the purse, you are creating the budget, you are deciding where resources are allocated, you are deciding who gets hired, who gets fired, making sure that you are hiring people who are credible in the work that is necessary is important. The level of homelessness that we have, right? 5 years, nearly 5 years into the term of the mayor of Minneapolis who promised to end homelessness is shocking. No one would ever stand for that. There is no way any other city would be okay with that. People would riot, people would be angry to see the level of encampments that we have in Minneapolis. The amount of needles that we see. There's a clinic that just shut down that my kids used to use, Whittier Clinic, because they can't open their doors. There is no path for safety for their patients. There's no path to get in for their employees. And we have resources in the city of Minneapolis. We had a surplus when COVID hit. Right? In the last package, I fought for Minneapolis to get $275 million. And the fact that our mayor is not using any of that money to help the people who are vulnerable in our city and isn't doing the right thing is heartbreaking. And so we just have to make sure that we are holding these people accountable, right, for their lack of action, their inability to lead, and their inability to actually fulfill the work that is necessary. I can't imagine. I used to work for Councilmember Andrew Johnson, and people would call in about potholes, and he would say you have to respond within 3 hours. Right? People would call about the traffic lights, and he would say we have to respond in 3 hours. I remember seniors calling and saying, getting fines because, the paint is chipping and whatnot. And he put a pool of money in to make sure that they had resources to be able to stay in their homes and not foreclose. Robert was on the city council. That's the job, and the mayor knows this. That's the job of the city council, is the job of the mayor to respond to their constituents' needs and to use those resources. If you continue to play politics, if you continue to neglect your job, your city will rot. And we are now dealing with the repercussions of what happens when you have a leader who does not take his job seriously.
Should I say that?
Yes, I did say that. My staff is reminding me that we just passed gun violence prevention bill, but I said that earlier. And in that bill, actually, it has millions of dollars to deal with mental health issues, to deal with substance abuse. We, in both of the both of the CARES Act, CARES bills that we passed under Trump had a lot of resources for that as well. Our city also got millions of dollars through that. And in the American Rescue Plan, again, just platitude of resources came in both to our state, nearly $2 billion came into our state, a state that already has a surplus. That money needs to be used for real things. I want to give another, acknowledge Robbinsdale Area School Director Sharon Brooks Green. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Congresswoman. I'm grateful to you for doing this and for the work you do. My name is Angela Dinker. I'm a resident of Minneapolis, and I'm also a Lutheran pastor. I serve a congregation in Solo, about an hour west of Minneapolis. So I always tell people I experienced two very different worlds politically, in McLeod County and also in southwestern Minneapolis. I'm also the author of a book on white Christian nationalism called Red State Christians. And I wanted to ask you if you had people on your staff who are working on combating white Christian nationalism, people who are looking at legislation that will protect the separation of church and state. And I also continue to see post-January 6th, particularly in rural Minnesota, we have people coming to township board meetings who are looking to overthrow the U.S. government right here in rural Minnesota. So I'm wondering what your staff is doing around white Christian nationalism, and if you have people on the ground who would like to connect with pastors here in the state and other clergy members and other leaders of their faiths as well to provide an alternative option. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for coming all the way from Minneapolis. I find that most of the time when I do town halls in 14 of the suburbs that I represent, that there's always Minneapolis representation as well. As you know, I believe in secularism. I believe that one of the things that makes our country great is that there is a separation of church and state. It's the only way that we are able to fully access our freedoms and liberties. And as someone who comes from a country where that doesn't exist, it's something I treasure dearly. And so we advocate for that. We work on that. We call people out through getting what the underlying theme of our Constitution is, and the fact that this country was really founded on religious liberty. I think that it is one thing to crack down on radicalization and the dangers that being radicalized through the lens of faith creates, and we're dealing with that right across many faith groups here in the United States and across the world. And so there are pieces of legislation, there is work that we're doing in that regard. There's obviously legislation we just passed around domestic terrorism, but I will caution us on infringing on the rights of people of faith and their ability to express their religious beliefs. Again, as an elected, that is an important thing for me to do, and something that we should remember. Unfortunately, I do serve with people in Congress that want to force this country to become one that doesn't fit with its identity and its values.
Hi, I'm Julie Wickland. I'm also a Minneapolis resident. Sorry we invaded your town hall here, I guess. Thanks for having us. I am also an epidemiologist. I worked at the Minnesota Department of Health, helped out on the COVID situation, COVID school. You're welcome. And that was a real learning experience, and worked with the rural schools and the metro schools. And then in December, I became the victim of violent crime. We had a home invasion at gunpoint in my home in southwest Minneapolis. And like many of us, we had been seeing it on the news, and we're like, never thought it would happen to us, but just like you said, your son. And that caused me to really try to kind of be an epidemiologist here and put on my hat to be this disease detective that I am, to try to understand what is going on. What is the breakdown of our system? And as you said, there has been a lot of inaction.
Money is not the problem. But we also need to stop pointing the fingers and take the piece of it that's ours, right? There's the local pieces, the state pieces, and the federal pieces. And all of us have a part of that. And so my question to you is on the representation of us when the constituents have, voted against the defund the police. As the other gentleman said, that is not what we want. We want our police to be supported. And so when we see the pieces that you do have control over at the federal level, such as voting for the Capitol security and voting against things like that, and continuing to talk about the defunding the police, it is defunding our police, right? It doesn't matter how much money we give them. Nobody wants to be in that institution anymore. And so we're seeing the repercussions of that now, and we will be for decades to come. And so, again, I have spoken, I have learned a lot in the last 6 months, but I also need to understand your piece of this from the federal level. There is pieces of it that have to do with what's going on here that isn't just about sending money.
So actually, I'm sorry for what you have experienced. The reality is Minneapolis Police Department is funded at the highest level at the moment than it has been before, so it hasn't been defunded. The reality is Congress has passed legislation to fund police across the country. Capital police funding, different story. That has nothing to do with police funding. The reason I actually voted against that is because it was tied to what happened January 6th. When January 6th happened, as you know, probably, I myself had detail. I had 6 Capitol Police officers assigned to me because there was an assassination plot against me. It's the reason that I wasn't one of the members who were hiding in the Capitol, that I was taken off campus to be with the leaders of Congress. And what I can tell you is that as somebody who spent 6 months with Capitol Police officers, money was not the problem. And what we asked for, and what they continue to ask for, is to investigate what the problem was, where the breakdown was. And it's oftentimes with leadership. And when you don't take accountability of how any person who's in leadership, who decides who goes where, and who comes where, and you just say, maybe there's a money problem, it doesn't address the problem. Many of the people who protected me that day, I don't think are around as part of that police force, or are doing the work that they were doing then. Because many of them are unhappy, or were unhappy with leadership, and that's why leadership change took place. And so oftentimes we read something in the news, and we think we know why it's happening, and there's a disconnect. If I believe, as somebody who is protected by Capitol Police, that we needed more police officers, I would have voted for that. If I thought that Minneapolis residents, including myself, who have been multiple times a victim of crime, whether it is being robbed at a gunpoint as I try to get out of my car, or having my house broken into, or having the need to call the police because somebody was threatening my life, or having a platform against me, I would have said, let's give them more money. The reality is, we are unsafe in Minneapolis, not because the police don't have money. It's because we holistically need to address the problems that we have. We have a lot of people who are unhoused. We have a lot of people who have mental health issues. We are dealing with substance abuse. All of those things need resources. We are also dealing with a credibility problem. A lot of people are not signing up to be recruited because they don't want to be associated with a police department that has only 4% unsolved homicide rate. where our neighbor in St. Paul has 90% unsolved homicide rate. Nobody wants to be associated with a police department that is garnering headlines that says they're destroying rape kits, where you have rape victims speaking up against them. Nobody wants to be associated with a police department that is not responding to the areas that are in need. I worked at City Hall. I did police ride-alongs, 3 shifts in each police department, except for the 5th, which is the one that serves you. And I will tell you that as somebody who's done the morning shift, the afternoon shift, and the dog shift, which is at night, that there is a huge discrepancy, and my former boss used to work on this, in the way that there is a response, in the way that there is engagement, and in the work that is being done. All I want to do as somebody who's lived in our city for 25 years is to make sure you and I do not become a victim of crime. That you and I can have people who will protect and serve us with certainty. And the people who will make the promises, who will do all the things, who helped fight against the ballot measure that would have helped us have a fresh start, are now doing exactly what that ballot measure was calling for, which is only to create a public safety department. And I would like to hear people who voted against that ballot measure now raise their concerns on why that is happening at the moment. Because all we wanted is a public safety department that encompasses everything. And that is exactly what they're doing right now, after they spent millions of dollars, some of our own tax dollars, in suing the city. And so I want people to actually understand where the problems are, who's actually failing them, and to make sure that we are holding the right people accountable to bring us the safety and security that we need in our state.
Hello, Congresswoman. My name is Miriam Sayasha, and I'm driving from St. Paul this evening to thank you for your ongoing work on the international work around Afghanistan specifically. I recently saw your amendment in the National Defense Act, and I
what we should be doing for folks in Afghanistan. And so we will continue to raise the issue. I think that one of my colleagues is going to push it on the Senate side, and hopefully we will have people actually be humans and not continue the suffering that Afghans have been subjected to for over 40 years. I recently went to Pakistan and visited a refugee camp that was created 40 years ago when we were helping Afghanistan defend themselves against the Soviet. And I met with people who got there 40 years ago. I also met people who got there when we invaded, and I met people who got there now after the Taliban took over. And as somebody who's a refugee, it's a tragedy to see something like that continue to happen and have my colleagues not join me in fighting to provide humanitarian access for so many of these people who've been devastated and no fault of their own. Right here in the booth.
I'm Hazel
And I
Cannon.
think this probably solves the question.
I'm Hazel Cannon from.
Thank you all for holding on with us. We are 11 minutes past our.
I'm from Minneapolis also, and my question is about the cost of prescription drugs. How we can bring it down.
Thank you. I don't know if I added that to my updates. As you know, a while back we passed legislation to cap insulin prices at $35. Unfortunately, it didn't pass the Senate, but the reconciliation bill that's being negotiated right now will have significant impact on the prices of prescription drugs. And so I do look forward to going back to Congress in a week and a half and getting that done. So there is a promise on the horizon, and relief might be coming soon. Thank you. Again, thank you all for coming, for your incredible questions, for your challenging questions, and I hope that we continue to work together to create a better district, a better state, and a better country and a world for all of us. See you next time.